up on the board right now, notably some big junglers. The Xin Zhao was something that you were hoping to see last game, but maybe as a
Yeah.
response to the Vi, this time it's going to be picked blind by Tian.
Yeah, especially when we've been talking about, I think, some AP junglers. I thought maybe this would be another game where we could start to see that. There are some AD champions, but Corki and Yonegon, I guess, really disincentivize a team from going for an AP jungle here. So, I mean, Varus, Ashe actually got a buff on this patch. We're playing on 15.1.4, so this is a buff this patch. And no Cassante so far in this draft, which feels so weird. Now here with the Ambessa being hovered, if this is locked in, I am expecting for Weibo on the 2-3 from red side, pick up your Cassante, and then you can pick your pick of the litter, because you talk about AD junglers now. There's no Vi, there's no Rel, there's no Nocturne either. I think backline threat is going to be really, really at a premium here coming into this second game.
And so it will be the Ambessa. It seems like Wei was aware that those are the two picks that most people were expecting him to go for. And speaking of, that Cassante most likely going to be the response here for Breathe. And it'll be Bin getting the Ambessa side of this matchup with a little bit more aggression, especially later on in the game. Light going to be locking in that Varus. That is another, pretty signature pick of his, as he will be piloting that one. A lot of physical damage so far in the draft for Weibo.
I thought maybe if we're going to be seeing a jungle, I think that's going to be our focus in the back end of the draft here for BLG. If you're Weibo, I'm thinking of bands like a Wukong and similar to the Viego that we saw got hovered here. BLG finishing out their first phase of draft with Ashe Braum, so a lot of great setup and utility coming in from this bottom lane. I'm looking at what junglers can Wei play here that are going to really kind of be able to leverage the power of this 2v2, and what are Weibo going to be choosing in the support position to be able to kind of handle this bot lane matchup, or are they going to try to duck this with a lane swap?
Yeah, the Ashe Braum, always a prevalent lane. You can maybe get around some of that with a poke-oriented Varus build, if that is the direction that Weibo want to go as we enter the second phase of bans. Wei going to be the target here. His Zyra is something that has been picked up a couple of times, most notably last summer. But I think right now for Wei, I would expect a little bit more of a utility-oriented champion, and just giving a mage over to Knight as well to round out the composition.
If we get Knight Syndra again, I'll be happy. I love watching this guy play. Is one of his most favorite champions. Obviously, I think a lot of the people who are watching LPL will probably remember that 2023 split with JDG. Knight Silas, Knight Syndra. These are two champions that I would just love to see him execute on. And
okay,
wow, we may have gotten Shun out of the roster, but you just can't take the Nidalee out of BLG, dude.
Yeah, I mean, this was a pick that they used to play when they had a different jungler on their team, and we've seen Jun whip it out a couple of times here this season on JDG as well. It's a pick that has been rising a little bit more in popularity, going to be matched up against Tian Xin Zhao, as look at a rise here on 4-5 for Weibo, going to be picked up blind. Don't expect too much flexing around there. That is most definitely going towards Xiaohu.
With Weibo, I think they had a lot more of the ability to kind of play this flexible spot, especially with a champion like Varus. Xin Zhao and Cassante can be duelists, but they're primarily going to be very good frontline. And now with this Karma and Rise, this Weibo team is very dangerous. I want to see what BLG are looking for on 5. This is the counter here for Knight. We were looking at Syndra. We want to see big team fight damage, and he has to be able to be consistent in later game fights. So what is the option here? Rise is notoriously difficult to push out of lane. He has a lot of mana issues, and seems like we're going with the Ahri.
There's a pick that Knight played a lot of last season on BLG's very, very successful 2024 roster. As a little more skirmish heavy, I would say, overall for BLG in that mid jungle. The 2v2 going to be very impactful in terms of the early game. Once Knight hits level 6, using that Spirit Rush to go around the map, control areas of Summoner's Rift alongside Wei. Where on the other side for Weibo, it seems like with their mid jungle, especially with Xiaohu on that rise, they're going to be doing a little bit more scaling, a little bit more split pushing potentially.
This is another game where we see BLG have to have an explosive early game. Nidalee, Ashe, Ahri, all of these champions are going to be great at being able to open up a fight with one pick, maybe force some summoner spells, get a kill to start off an objective. But you look on the opposite side here for Weibo, and you have a Varus who can opt for either the poke build or the on-hit build. Both are going to make him tanky or deceptively have a lot of more HP in different ways. And with this Rise in Karma, they're just accentuating some of the low range but high damage potential. And as fights go on, they're going to be more advantageous. So another game where we're looking at BLG having to hit the ground running here, while Weibo want to look towards a 35-minute game.
And we didn't see too much early action for BLG in that game number 1. Well, we had a similar sentiment. They were biding their time a little bit, especially with that lane swap that Weibo initiated, in order to make sure that when the time was right, they were able to team fight successfully. Skirmishing, of course, going to be a big factor of this one as well. Especially looking at once these players hit level 6, around that first grub spawn, that's where I think things get a little bit spicy as we are on to the way for game number 2. BLG took game 1. Weibo looking to respawn, make this a competitive series, and avoid another fate like they suffered in 2024.
Early on, do you expect that BLG would have a lot more damage early?
Wow, oh wow, Hung already burned the flash. He got a little bit too aggressive in terms of poking. And he's just going to go down. A very questionable decision there by Weibo will allow BLG to pick up first blood.
You know that their bottom lane and that this entire composition is so much stronger at level 1. Braum level 1, Ashe, Ahri, all of these champions are incredibly difficult. And look at what BLG traded for it. It was the singular flash of this Karma, but Knight, Wei, and On no longer have access to the summoner spell. So we'll see what this first blood has opened up. It does mean that Knight gets to recall and get themselves boots early on. And we'll be looking at what this bottom lane pair does now as we're getting the lane swap immediately.
And this time, actually, it is BLG who are setting up a bit of a swap situation. If they got all 5 of their members actually just around the top side jungle, and they're spotted on a ward. So right now, Weibo know exactly what is happening, and they know they have all the time in the world to get full control of this bottom side.
This has to be a short trade. It's also going to be lethality Varus here. Braum is really far up. Look at where Ashe is. If they don't show here, it could be very dangerous. Now, On's going to have to walk back into this lane with half HP. Wonder if they're going to miss any of the minions. Looking at that HP. Okay, they're going to get in range right at the end of it. So close.
Yeah. So BLG, they tried to call Weibo's bluff. They said, we've been seeing you lane swap every single time over the last 3 games now that you have played. And so they tried to match up by sending Elkinon around the top side, but smart of them to not fully commit to that play and instead giving them enough time to, while lose out on the push, at least get all the XP of these minions here, as level 2 has now been hit up by Light and Hung. Already a heal burn to try to just root down On, who remember does not have that flash from level 1. Could be in trouble. One more auto from Hung is not enough as the potions are healing On up all the way back to base.
But this was the matchup that I think BLG wanted to avoid. They did not want to have to play into the Varus and the Karma. You get outranged, you're able to deal much more poke damage and not really have to interact or get into a trade with Ashe. You can match some of her range with this with the W. So tough start here for the side of BLG. They tried to call out. They had no vision as to where they were starting on this bottom side of the map. And now we're seeing Tian and Xiaohu walk into the bottom side of the map. They can continue to punish.
And they're looking immediately for this Gromp. It is on the vision right now for BLG, but now Tian flashes on top away. Remember, he doesn't have his flash either, and that's a big Jin Zhao skirmishing alongside Xiaohu, and it allows for Weibo to pick up their first kill of the game, and now turn their eyes towards the bottom lane and force a teleport out of Knight.
Look at where this minion wave is, though. Nowhere near to crashing, so Knight loses his TP, and Xiaohu is very happy with the effects
they
of
land
that.
the root.
Oh, no.
And the tether connects as well. The Unbreakable is going to expire. Hung picks up another kill. Weibo getting free kills after losing out on that level 1 because of the missing summoner spells that were given away.
And they get to cannibalize Wei's jungle, which, all in all, a huge win here for Weibo. We were worried about them not having an explosive early game, and it seems so far, at least in Game 2, they've come to play here, getting summoner spells, denying golden experience from BLG's carries, and making them pay for an early first blood.
And we said that BLG was a team that was going to want to scrap early to skirmish, but when you lose 3 of your flashes early, things end up maybe not going your way, especially after Elkinon lost out on that early push against the double-ranged bottom lane of Light and Hung. And now it is 2-1 in favor of Weibo. They are up just a little bit of gold and looking very, very good for themselves in a composition that does scale very, very well.
Okay, gotta see it. We're seeing them now deploy onto the top side of the map here for BLG. 4 members deep on this top side of the map. trying to take a few more camps here for Wei on this Nidalee, who typically when we're seeing this Nidalee, definitely wants to be a little bit more farm-oriented, making sure that she's hitting incredible item breakpoints so that those spears and those traps deal a lot more damage, but can still be a bit of an enchanter, especially for trying to empower some of the other carries here. And we'll see what else they're able to do on the side of the map, as Knight's got to get active. Once he has that level 6, I am expecting for BLG to start playing around these really important ultimates between him and Elk.
It looks like we're getting some altered lane assignments as well. It seems like now BLG are the ones who are trying to get Elk and On out of this 2v2, but looks like Weibo not having any of it, and they're going to continue to push their advantage down there in the mid lane now as Xiaohu and Knight make their way towards bot. Looks like now those grubs that we talked about going into this game are spawning in about 30 seconds, so Tian up around the top side of the map. Wei around the area as well, but right now it really looks like Weibo are doing a good job controlling the map just because of the push that they've been able to get mid.
Especially with this bottom lane, I think that Weibo and specifically Tian is playing really, really well around the priority of this bottom lane. So we need to see them continue to snowball this. 10 seconds before grubs, they're getting the wave push. They're playing really far up because they know every little bit of damage counts for them being able to move off. And I love this. Breathe gets a massive wave against Pin under the turret, so then moves in for the objective. BLG have not a lot to play for. Even if Knight pushes out on this bottom lane wave, there's a very real possibility that Wei gets collapsed upon by the bottom lane of Weibo. So Tian has free reign of the jungle. We need to see now Weibo push the state of the map, either getting turrets, forcing kills, forcing summoner spells. Otherwise, we're going to get into a very similar situation from game 1 where there's some early action, we see great priority coming in from them, but not enough to really spiral the game into their control.
Right, it seemed like in game 1, Weibo, they did their prep on the first like 5 minutes of the game. Maybe they were using the practice tool and just redoing those moments over and over again. But after that, it was about 2-1 for a while, maybe 2-2 in terms of the kill score. And it seemed like they got the resources in the right places, but after that, did not know what exactly to do in order to execute on their composition successfully. So now that they've picked up these first 3 grubs, it looks like they're going to lose the dragon on the other side. But Weibo certainly happy with where they are at this game right now. They hold themselves a 1,000 gold lead. They've got 2 of those 3 kills that they need for that feat of strength. And they got the gold in the places that they want as well with Xiaohu picking up those Merc Treads, and he's going to be a very, very threatening rise. And the clock is ticking until that happens.
3-item rise, man, and he has so many ways of being able to get there, especially when we talk about what his team has. The lethality build for the Varus, while doesn't necessarily have the same sticking power as an on-hit build, we're able to branch them or bridge them into the early game. Then you get to those 2 items, you're talking about this for this rise. He becomes very difficult to kill, especially with the Karma next to him. So we'll see what BLG do to answer him. He doesn't have a cleanse, so any bit of CC that lands onto Xiaohu is going to stick. And that's one of the dangerous parts on any champion, is getting crowd controlled for 5 to 6 seconds at a time.
And that is very possible here with BLG's composition. You've got stun after root after stun after charm. Things all that Weibo have to be careful of right now. As again, just let's go back a little bit with just the history of these 2 programs as well here, because it's not just 2024, which BLG have controlled. It goes back even further than that. You even think of a player like Bin up in the top lane. Like, he got his start on Suning, which is the team that eventually became Weibo. So a bit of a full circle moment for him last year, and still going into this year, that relationship remains the same.
And we even can kind of move across the map as well. The last time Xiaohu was able to win up against Knight was in 2023 summer. It's been a while, and the same thing can be said for the Weibo organization, where they haven't been able to win outside of Worlds in some of those instances since 2023, and even before then domestically. So got a lot of history riding on it, and it would mean a lot, especially for, I think for Weibo, a team that has been doubted a lot of the times. They've been a roster that, hey, you have some great players. Yeah, you can make some deep runs in some of the tournaments, but you're not always the expected favorite. Even think of that 2023 roster with the Shy. They weren't expected to make it to Worlds Finals. Xiaohu last year wasn't really expected to make semifinals again on this Weibo team, and hopefully they can pick up a trophy, because if they get a repeat of last year's finals, then I think it's going to start to sting a little bit for the Weibo organization.
Yeah, it's like, surely this doesn't happen 4 times in a row, right? And well, it looks like potentially after that game 1, we could be getting there. And speaking of Breathe, around that bottom side, had to dash away, and will be able to escape from that enchanted crystal arrow. as we continue to play this early game a little bit slower after that initial burst of kills, Alk. I remember that was something that you were hoping maybe not to see from Weibo. Or do you like the way that they've been maneuvering around the map in these last 5 minutes?
Weibo has been really strong about making sure that they're getting plates and that they're getting gold for their bottom lane duo. Now that they've chunked out on 30 seconds before the grubs, I mean, there's no Ashe ultimate. This should be the objective going over to Weibo unless they decide to index for another one, but maybe it's going to be a turret at that point because the dragon doesn't spawn for 2, so they're going to continue to push on the top side of the map utilizing their pair, and then you already see the Tian can have access to cover, but he's just going to take his red buff and move. They also have Xiaohu, which with this Realm Warp can move across the map pretty fast.
So with On kind of able to reset and make its way back, will be a pretty even fight around the second spawn of grubs, and it looks like BLG do want to respond. Remember, this style of fight is kind of what goes in their favor, especially with Knight heading back towards the mid lane, but it looks like instead they're going to opt away from it, try to get some priority mid, and allow for Weibo to pick up all 6 of these grubs and get even closer to that feat of strength being claimed.
We're also getting some first items completed here, Malignance for Knight, but we also just haven't seen the Spirit Rush yet, so that first ultimate's going to have to be a good one, and he can spam it, very low cooldown already, and with Malignance he's going to be able to kind of shift around the map a lot quicker. I want to see how Weibo are going to be playing around this Rise, because it seems like they want to try to make this play on the top side. We already see BLG are starting to reinforce On and Wei in the wings. Xiaohu walking into Fog of War. They want to get as many plates. They've got 6 grubs. How much gold can we get for our carries?
Yeah, and you know, they're sending 4 people up underneath the top lane turret, but they have no reason or no initiative to try to go for a dive. It is all for these plates, which Light and Hung have been able to collect very, very well here in this game. It allows them to continue to add on to their gold lead. Been hovering around 1,000 for now. You can take a look around the gold department. It's actually been Xiaohu who's been giving up a lot of his CS to allow for his bottom lane to get ahead. And if Knight is able to make good use of that, it could mean that BLG can get back into this game a little bit, but right now it is all Weibo.
Yeah, the lead that Light has in the CS department over Elk does come from some of the laning, but like you were saying, Xiaohu now down a level and a half versus this Ahri. Very important because the amount of points you're able to put into your ult as Rise is going to be representative of your damage. You get more damage from your Overload passive if you have more points. So, and even for someone like Knight with this Ahri, we haven't seen them really connect into the game yet. There's been a lot of movement. There's been a lot of almost and could have beens. Not necessarily a connection on the play there. Dragon is up. We've got Herald spawning in 3.5. Maybe we get to see them play with this ultimate, with the Ashe ultimate available from BLG. Yeah,
I mean, these fights are going to have to result, like, you know, stem from, you know, maybe a good engage found here by that Enchanted Crystal Arrow of Knight, which the Ashe Arrow at this point seems to be the primary form of engage for BLG, if not for Bin on some sort of flank with the public execution. But a lot of the damage is going to have to be pushed out by Knight, who now has that Aether Wisp and is going to get caught out in this bottom side Tribush by Xiaohu, and that allows for Weibo to make their way down towards this dragon. They want to even up that count, but BLG have other things to say about it eventually.
And this is a lot different game than what we saw in Game 1. There was more engage options for a player like Wei, but now on this Nidalee, you are really reliant on your mid and support for making plays happen. Everybody from Weibo is here.
Hits onto Hung, but he's way too far away for anything to happen about it. Spear does land on the dragon, but it will be secured by Tian, who might now have to flash over the wall in order to survive, or they could continue to go forward onto BLG and try to look for a fight themselves. Looks like instead just threatening aggressively with their posture and then heading back with the reset and the dragon in their back pocket.
This BLG composition is really, really reliant on making sure that you are either first to a play or that you have angles to make plays happen. If you are first, you can deny so much vision, so much ability for the team to walk in with just an Ahri Charm from Fog or a Ashe Arrow or even the Nidalee, right? But without them being there first and the Ashe ultimate not landing onto any members that were really in range, BLG are finding it very difficult to find fights and actually get those pick composition to start working. And Weibo are going to continue to scale up. They're going to get tankier. They're going to get more HP. Rod of Age is done here for this Rise. Tian is continuing to build more of those bruiser items. This game does not get easier for BLG, so we need to see them pick up the pace. They need to be able to find unique angles, maybe find flanks, and that comes with denying vision, walking in, and trying to create Fog of War for Weibo.
we'll say, you know, the scaling maybe not as strong as it could have been now that Light has gone with a lethality build, but just because of the squishy members on BLG's side, the very, you know, low HP composition that they've gone for, it makes sense for Light to have opted towards this style of build, especially with the amount of gold and the amount of plates that it's been able to gather for himself because of it. But right now, BLG, kind of, as you mentioned, playing with that timer, now that the Rod of Ages has now finally been picked up by Xiaohu. Knight still hovering around here this top side, but Weibo have full control around the area. That Rift Herald spawning in less than a minute. You know that Weibo going to have their eyes on that one as well.
Weibo dropped a lot during that play, I will say. There's a ton of focus against 6 grubs. You are looking for that first turret. Would also give them feats of strength if they're able to take this. So much range coming in to deal with BLG here. Got
oh wow, they're going to go for the fight. On has to flash away. Tian just using that 3 talent strike to force BLG away. As that will be the first tower completed. That is the feats of strength going over to Weibo this time around.
Elk has been able to at least get himself on parity with his opponent, finishing off the Yuntal Wild Arrows and closing a lot of the CS gap that we did see from the bottom lane, closing it up by at least 20, so is able to catch a couple of those waves in mid and make good on, you know, just making those item breakpoints. But temporary gold injection here for Weibo, like you were saying with that turret falling. You've got the Herald here as well. I don't know. Weibo can continue pushing on a side lane. They've got Ghost for Xiaohu. Xiaohu's actually almost about to hit level 11 as well, so he's going to be very powerful for this upcoming fight. Asher goes missing again.
I mean, he was very, very close to hitting Hung, but now, without that ultimate, Elk could be in a lot of trouble right now. He already used both of his summoner spells. Tian dashing in, and Light will pick up the kill onto his opposing AD carry. A big mistake there for BLG's bot laner will allow for Weibo to garner mid control and potentially look for more with all 6 grubs. Look at those little mites charging right down the mid lane.
Oh no, the mites are coming. They're getting the teleport out from Knight. Maybe there's a turn play. You see that Bin is starting to move over, but instead gives up on the play. BLG are going to have to just pick up table scraps after that, as it was a lot of summoner spells, but they broke open the map here on the side of Weibo.
And so now the gold lead back up to where it was a few minutes ago, as BLG has started to work things back just in terms of the farm department. Most notably now, Light picking up his first kill of the game is going to be big for him. And actually, this, you know, in trade of getting big damage onto that mid lane tier 2, looks like Weibo actually opted to not take the Rift Herald, and it's going to be started up by Wei.
I think this is illegal, right? Like there's no way that they're actually able to grab that. I think maybe BLG being a bit adventurous in the fact that maybe they could get away with a fast timer if they were looking to deploy out onto the bot, especially again talking about dragon spawning in 45. Knight's got to be careful. It is only 2 members here, but sounds incredibly tanky. Yeah. They know, look, we got the ultimate out. That's going to be important for the dragon in 35.
That's a lot of respect given there by Knight towards Xiaohu by using the ultimate before he even got into range, but it does allow now for Weibo Gaming to make their way towards this Rift Herald and likely pick it up with no jungler in the area. Wei headed down to the bot lane, knowing it's a lost cause, maybe trying to set up around that Drake. We'll say Bin has gotten his fair share of poke on to breathe throughout this whole ordeal. He's still trying to get his way back into this game as well, but right now Weibo really seem controlled and comfortable with how this game number 2 is going.
They've got 6 grubs, they've got Herald, they've only missed out on 1 early dragon, but aside from that, it's been a rather clean game coming in from Weibo. It seems like the fights are going all their way as well. Seems like they're really trying to play around the map, and some of that early game, I mean, look, they got the first blood onto Hung, but I feel like BLG paid so much more for that. They lose out on their bot 2v2. They end up still giving over the kill from Elk and On, and now you're in a spot where the Ahri is slowly starting to lose value. Maybe on a second item spike, we'll see BLG really start to fight. And Bin is slowly getting into this. I think if there's ever going to be an X factor, it has to be the solo lanes here. I mean, Knight, his individual history we talked about a lot, but Bin internationally and domestically has been one of, if not the best player in the LPL for years now. So need to see him and Knight really link up if they want to bring BLG to a 2-0.
And they're already on the back foot here around this dragon as Wei had to flash away from Tian as they make their way towards this ocean dragon. In the meantime, Breathe with those 6 grubs will pick up the bottom lane tier 1 turret and now make his way towards the Tribrush where he's going to spot out the Nidalee, who now is in the wrong side of places without that flash. it looks like right now they're going to just leave him be, as Tian will spawn that Rift Herald, try to use it to maybe get some pressure into the mid lane, as on the other side of things, Weibo also hitting onto this tier 2 tower down bottom.
Just a distraction, and also the mid tier 1 is just so low. The Crash will take it. Bin is getting a top tier 1 at this moment, so some small gold injection. They make the play.
Okay, well, they've bought enough time for Wei to actually continue to stick around down there, and they already pick up a shutdown onto Xiaohu. But look at Breathe, he's gone all out in a 1v3 for now, but can turn things around potentially. The Chain of Corruption is going to connect onto Wei, and Breathe will clean up that kill to make it 4-2 in favor of Weibo. Crescent Guard comes out from Tian. He dashes forward onto the main carry. Elk is down. Knight still trying to dish out as much damage as he possibly can. He spear rushes forward. Hung has to flash away from the charm, but the flash follows in from Knight to at least make it a 1-for-1 trade. Light and Bin now duking it out. Bin does not have that ultimate, so a lack of gap closing ability and a lack of crowd control, but he still does not lack in that damage department. Going in towards Light, the Q and the hail of arrows will connect, and it's going to be all 5 down for BLG.
Weibo make the fight happen. It starts with their mid laner going down and a lot of summoners traded, but BLG collapse in that fight. Missed spells, missed ultimates, and it's just not looking good here for the side of Bilibili, as yes, it's this opening pick, but look at how long it takes them to actually find this pick onto Xiaohu, and by the time it happens, the rest of Weibo are on their way. Tian waiting in the wings, stops Knight from getting into the play. This ultimate landing onto Wei stops any play from BLG, and I was like, oh, maybe it's not going to matter. This ult from Bin, him not getting into the fight just a little bit sooner, means that Light is just allowed to free fire through all of this.
And it looked like Knight was about to have a hero moment here, but a really nice flash away from the charm from Hung prevents him from getting an extra reset. And then we get this 1v2, which Bin nearly is able to take care of.
I mean, if Bin's champion was released any sooner to the release date of right now,
yeah,
maybe he would have been able to kind of win that one. But he's just barely not able to do so. And that's more kills going over to Light and the side of Weibo Gaming. As there's no dragon to spawn around. We're really kind of jockeying for position around mid lane and playing around the Otacon. Oh, on?
That's the Unbreakable, but now the Chain of Corruption does connect on top of him. Going to be a big chunk of poke with that piercing arrow, and look at Bin. He's going to be trapped underneath the enemy team, but he's going to take down Hung with him. It's a 1-for-1 so far, but Elk is next on the menu, and Tian will pick up that kill. Knight lands the charm onto the Jin Zhao and will force him to back away. Another 2-for-1 though in favor of Weibo Gaming, with the Otacon up down at the bottom side of the map.
All right, Tian's back to being the GOAT again. Maybe it's just having a Kelsey on the show diff, but this guy is playing so well in this game. The Xin Zhao is able to be super effective. I think in that fight, if we get a replay of it, we'll get to see that he knocked Bin right back into his team and prevented him from escaping that fight. That was so well played from the Xin Zhao here. And so, I don't know, man. It's feeling like that game one from Weibo was more of a like a wake up for them, saying, okay, we got to play versus these guys. We cannot let them take the ball and keep running with it.
And it looks like that early game aggression that we saw a little bit at the start of game number 2 has carried over here into the mid game, as it is again Tian leading the charge. And you wouldn't normally think to just engage onto a Braum, but this time it worked.
Look at this, man. Like, Bin got right in the back line, recognized he's too far, and oh, wait, picture, we're live.
Right back into the fight, and Bin has once again gotten caught out. Chain of Corruption landed on top of him, and now Breathe, potentially on the wrong side of things, but he did take another down with him, as Elk is already in the death chamber, and Breathe will not fall, as Wei will go down as well. Tian now underneath every single tower, just in the base of BLG, making quick work of Knight. Another 4 kills go in favor of Weibo, as they're going to break open the base less than 24 minutes in.
All the 3-0ers, be damned. We're going to at least 4 games here in this series. It's on by himself, and BLG just collapse in this second game versus Weibo.
Just On is alive with all 5 members of Weibo Gaming onto the Nexus turrets. It's 5 seconds on Bin, 5 seconds on Elk, but it might just be a few seconds too late. They're on to the Nexus. They're going to take it down, and hands meet series. Weibo even things up.
There we go. Okay, Weibo, we finally came to play. Like we said, BLG have not been infallible this season, and already showing here in this best of 5, taking a loss here, and a kind of a combination. We were praising the duo of On and Wei, but I think that they had two of their individual misgivings kind of occur in the same game. The Nidalee didn't really get prepped all that well, and this Braum just felt like, yes, it's great into some of the range, but on individually, I think he just took too many bad timers, too many bad trades.
And that allowed really for the Weibo bottom lane to take over from minute 1. You know, right after that level 1 kill was given over, which, you know, was a big deal at the time. It was BLG maybe playing a little bit too many head games with themselves about where this lane swap was going to go, and then it allowed for Weibo to get that early push. It allowed for everybody to get the advantages and the kind of lane assignments that they wanted, and it seemed like Weibo were in control, but I feel like part of us were always a little bit hesitant. They're like, okay, I was thinking, okay, BLG, they're going to come back into this game somehow, some way. But Weibo just won fight after fight, and they won the game before Baron even spawned.
I think that sets more of it speaks more of the pedigree and some of the precedent that BLG have already put forward. You know, we're talking about so many games in the LPL where they have really risky mid games and they just win one fight and boom, the game's over. Right? BLG have bought a lot of goodwill and good faith with the community with the level of play they've put up for the last year and a half, but here in this game, it just felt like nothing was working. I think this was another game where we also didn't see the solo laners do all that much. Like, Bin on this Ambessa was just solo farming versus Cassante the entire game. Knight on the Ahri actually had a lot less movement than, you know, we were expecting. We didn't really see him move out of lane too many times. It felt more like Knight was matching and just trying to catch waves, and then he looks over and his bottom lane's getting caught. There's no opportunity while Xiaohu is just kind of leveraging this rise and the mobility that this champion has on the map.
Yeah, that was an interesting dichotomy. We really saw Knight on the Ahri, the one farming mid lane, getting that 30 CS lead, getting that 1 to 2 level lead, where Xiaohu on the rise, which is normally a champion that we associate with, you know, 400 CS hack, right? Like, it was unable to do that, but was roaming around the map as early as level 3 to help impact his side lanes, and that actually really ended up being a winning formula here for Weibo Gaming. So 1-1 series overall. Reminder that this is a true fearless best of 5, so more and more champions going to be taken away, stakes going to be raised more and more. Once again, both of these teams would consider it a disappointment to their season if they lose this series here today, and Weibo definitely had that on top of their minds here in this game number 2. 24-14, the final.
Chef's kiss. You can just look at the solo lanes and just tell me how useful they were this game. The damage numbers, they don't tell the full story. Stats never do, but, I mean, I loved how Weibo played around this bottom lane, and we can expect more things like this. When we talk about Weibo, Light specifically has been a player who has really kind of more focused on some of those in-lane counter picks, wanting to play for the laning phase, not necessarily looking at the Draven, but my eyes have been, he is one of the few players who have actually been picking up the Caitlyn in years past, so I want to see if this is going to be a strategy that they more so index into, especially with the move away from later game team fighting and really trying to play for those 5v5s. I think the laning phase, and if we're going to continue to play around our bottom lane like this, Weibo do have a recipe for success. BLG's bot lane have never been ones to really kind of win the 2v2 outright. They have been a team that when they had soon earlier, it was about flipping the 2v3, making dives, and making the laning phase as uneven as possible.
Yeah, and we saw some of those things go awry when Weibo lost in their best of 5 in the group stage to JDG, but I think we saw a lot of that go their way this time around, creating numbers advantages, creating situations that they are comfortable in, as we take a look at some of our replays and some of those instances as well. We saw Bin, we saw Knight have almost good moments this game, but never did they really have that one fight where we were like, okay, now they're here to play. This one just maybe a little bit too far forward from Bin. He gets knocked right back due to the crescent guard, and yeah, just not the way that they wanted this game to go.
Yeah, and a lot of this does come off the back of not only the bottom lane play, but Tian on this Xin Sao, man. Like, he was doing crazy work. We had the bot lane dives all work well. Him in the bottom lane, honestly, I would not be surprised to see one of the three in those three kind of get the MVP vote, as they really put in a lot of work. Honestly, if you wanted a for fun hung MVP vote, this is the one where I'd be like, okay, fine. It's funny. I just don't know if Karma necessarily earned it, but yeah, you know, he used his body to get 3 summoner spells at level 1. I'd say that's worth.
That is, yeah. Does he get the MVP just for dying level 1 is the question. Like, is that Was that worth enough? Because
I
it
would
did
have
open
MVP
up.
every game then.
It did open up a lot of possibilities for how, you know, BLG were unable to play the map and how Weibo were able to take advantage of the first 5 minutes of the game. I feel like a lot of the time it's cope. Like, you die level 1 and then you just ping all the flashes that were used to try to kill you. But this time, looks like Weibo actually used that to good use and were able to get an advantage off of that. And that is where they're able to take a hold of this game and they never let go.
And we'll have to see what that looks like here coming into Game 3, because now it's 2 games and you're done. 2 games and you're done for the season. You're going to be waiting till after first stand. You're going to have to be able to take a little break. And we were talking about it a little bit before about the preseason. Weibo did play in Demacia Cup. BLG, because they made grand finals, they were allowed an exception. They didn't have to play. And we'll see who the MVP is. It is going to be Tian, my GOAT. That's what I like to see. Great job. You did great this game, which was not the same we could say in your Vi, but it's okay. You got the rest of the series to be able to kind of level up and make it on through.
Yeah, he tried his best on the Vi, but this game, as we take a look at this, the early gameplay that we were referring to with him and Xiaohu, taking use of the fact that Italy did not have Flash early on, and yeah, Tian just playing a very good game, as Weibo Gaming have evened up this series at a game apiece. They have broken the streak. It's about 10 wins in a row consecutively here for Bilibili Gaming, but now Weibo have evened things up, as we will head into game number 3 after this.